Okay, up to this point, you've been using any editor you wanted for editing your files, and you've been testing those files by simply dragging the main HTML file onto Firefox or Chrome. Now, however, you need to deploy your files to a real web server. Here's why. So we introduced jQuery in the previous section. But the next topic, the next several sections, in fact, look at using AJAX in jQuery. AJAX involves using jQuery, using JavaScript, to make a network connection to the server, retrieve some information, and do something with it, like inserting something into the page. Well, in order to make a network connection, you need to be on the network. And so your web page needs to run on a server, and that server needs to support HTTP. That's the network protocol used by web servers. So you can't do anything with AJAX and jQuery unless you're running on a web server. It's also better if the web server can do something dynamic. By dynamic, I mean produce some information that either is different each time or depends on what you pass to it. So for example, something that's different each time is the current server time of day, or maybe a random number. The reason it's useful to have the server return something different each time is so that you can access it over and over again and see that it's updating, see that it's changing. Later on, we'll look at passing information to the server. It'd be nice if the server could produce something based on what we passed it so that we can verify that we're passing it the proper information. jQuery doesn't know anything about Java. It just knows things about the URL that it's connecting to. And so that URL can be running PHP, it can be running .NET, it can be running Ruby, and so forth. However, perhaps Java is the simplest kind of dynamic server to set up. And Java is also the most widely used server-side language, so we might as well use Java. However, I want to emphasize this is not a video series on the back-end server-side code. I'm not going to be teaching you Java. Now, I do that elsewhere, but not in this video series. But don't panic. You do not need to know anything about Java in order to run these applications. You just need to know how to set up the server. Now, there is a few places where I'm going to provide some simple server-side scripts that do things like return a random number, return the current time, or return something based on what you pass it. However, when you do your exercises, you can just copy those. You don't need to edit them or really understand how they work. And in fact, on your exercises, you can just use text files. Now, the text files are not quite as interesting because they return the same thing every time. But still, it works with jQuery to access the server as long as the server is running HTTP, even if the file that you're accessing is just a simple text file. Okay, so in order to set up a server that runs Java and deploy an application on it, the first thing you need, of course, is Java itself. Now, again, I'm not going to be teaching you Java syntax. Even if you never see any Java code, you never write a line of Java code, the server is running Java, so you need Java installed on your computer. Then you need some kind of web server that uses Java. Now, there's a whole bunch of web servers that use Java. Several of them are free and open source, but perhaps the most commonly used one and easiest one to install comes from Apache, and it's called Tomcat. Then you need some sort of editor and development environment that will let you organize your HTML files, your CSS files, and your JavaScript files, launch Tomcat, and send your files over to it. You don't want to do that all manually. It's much too tedious. There are several environments that do that, but Eclipse, a free and open source tool, is the most common one. If you use Eclipse, you need to know how to make an application in Eclipse. In particular, an application that can eventually be deployed to a server. And finally, you need to deploy it to the server in Eclipse. Deploying it to the server just means launching Tomcat, the web server, sending your files over there, and then accessing the proper URL in your web browser that retrieves and runs those files. Okay, don't panic. You don't have to understand all these tools. You just have to be able to install those tools and use Eclipse in a very simple way. And I will walk you through that interactively step by step. It's quite simple.